Because this is that special time of year when you gather around the table with friends and family and loved ones, I figured this week was a perfect time to talk about stabbing them all in the back.
Wrestling with regret. Let's get it, yeah!
Of all of wrestling's familiar tropes and trappings, perhaps none is more powerful than the betrayal. Though it can be argued it's been done a little too much in the last few years, when it's done correctly, a betrayal can ignite a killer feud or become a defining moment in a wrestler's career. Whether they come from out of nowhere or they can be seen months ahead of time, a well-played backstabbing can be remembered forever. This week, I want to explore some of the greatest instances of wrestling's greatest plot twist and take a look at why so many of these stand the test of time. No rankings here, just a collection of my favorites divvied up into 4 categories. There's friends, families, factions, and a special fourth one we'll be talking about in a little bit. But for right now, put that knife down and instead take that hand and use it to click subscribe to Wrestling with Regret, because we're about to dive into wrestling's greatest betrayals.
JCW Lunacy. New episodes every Thursday night at 7 p.m. on YouTube. For over 25 years, JCW has delivered the very best in pro wrestling entertainment, bringing fans deep storytelling drama, gut-busting comedy, and unbelievable in-ring action. From wild characters to unforgettable rivalries, JCW has built a legacy that spans generations of fans. Whether you've been watching since day one or you're brand new to the chaos, there's never been a better time to join the madness. See why JCW is the hottest promotion in independent wrestling today, where anything can happen, and usually does.
Oh, take a look at this!
Don't miss a single moment. Tune in every Thursday night at 7 p.m. on YouTube and catch up on past episodes right now. JCW Lunacy. It's more than wrestling, it's a way of life.
Try kick San Martino, and he really let him have it. Oh no.
If you think it was annoying when Roman Reigns held the WWE title for as long as he did, you might not have survived in Bruno Sammartino's day. The living legend worked from 1963 until '84, and during that time, Bruno smashed gates and records, holding the WWF Championship for an astounding combined 11 years. Just imagine all the complaining there would have been on Twitter if it were around then. Throughout much of the 1970s, Bruno buddied up with a prospect in Larry Zbyszko. Of all the on-screen friendships at the time, this one may have been the most personal, as a young Lawrence Whistler really did track down Bruno at his home in Pittsburgh and asked his hero to train him to be a pro wrestler. As the decade turned, Larry expressed frustration with being unable to escape the Italian Superman's shadow, finally challenging his mentor to a match in January of 1980. Pissed that he was being out-wrestled by the elder Sammartino, Zbyszko snapped and attacked Bruno with a wooden chair, leaving him laying in a pool of his own blood, a shocking act of violence for the time. Considering the amount of clout Bruno had in the Northeast, the attack made Larry the most hated heel in the territory. The blow-off match that summer, a steel cage match at New York's Shea Stadium, drew nearly 40,000 folks, but conflicts with Vince Sr. over money compelled the new living legend to leave in 1981. Zbyszko would go on to have great success in the AWA and WCW, though I can't help but wonder how his career might have gone differently had he stuck around in the Federation, how different their main event scene might have looked by '84 had he kept his momentum going. Nevertheless, his turn on Sammartino was the spark that turned his career from middling to meteoric in a matter of months, one of the best examples of this kind of archetype on this scale in the pre-expansion era.
Reach out for me. I'm a snake. Never trust a snake.
By 1991, the WWF was well on its way to telling grittier stories, which was heralded in some ways by the arrival of The Undertaker at the 1990 Survivor Series. The dead man almost immediately targeted the Ultimate Warrior after his debut, and Warrior sought some outside help in a quest to learn more about the dark side. To help even the odds, Warrior enlisted the help of fellow babyface Jacob the Snake-Up Roberts, who at this point was easily the third or fourth top good guy in the company. Over the next few weeks, Jake subjected Warrior to various tests, from locking him into a casket to burying him alive.
You've got to learn the Undertaker's way, brother. It's the dark side, the snake side, if you can understand. Trust me, my friend. Trust me, and let me show you. Bury me, Snake Man! Stand your ground, Warrior!
Hey, my favorite Ronnie James Dio track. But the snake, worm, turned on the episode of Superstars right before SummerSlam. For the final test, Roberts locked the Warrior in a room full of deadly hymns.
Warrior, huh?
Aw, he looks so happy and cheerful. Oh, Jesus, he bit him in the face! Then we see this nigh-indestructible hero being slowly poisoned to death as Roberts reveals his true intentions, working with The Undertaker all along. The WWF, wholesome family entertainment. I actually do love this stuff. It's Jake at his coldest, Warrior at his, well, dare I say, his most nuanced. This one stands out in that it's the only betrayal on this list not to take place in front of a live audience. But for the millions of little Warriors watching, seeing their hero on the brink of extinction was bound to leave a mark, live or taped. It was an all-time segment for the Snake Up and perfectly encapsulated his character. Cool and mysterious, but at the end of the day, he's no hero. It's not hyperbole to call this next segment not just one of the greatest betrayals in wrestling, but also one of the most important pieces of lore in WWE history. It's a moment so powerful they've ripped it off themselves at least a couple times by now. After years of ups and downs together on the road, the Midnight Ruckers, Shawn and Marty, were at each other's throats more often than not. Wanting to break out on his own, Shawn Michaels demanded that the team be split up and even threatened to quit the company if the WWF didn't give him a fair shot in the singles ranks. The company acquiesced, and after months of on-air tension between the Rockers, they were brought together in an episode of The Barbershop in January of '92 to smooth things over. I mean, if Brutus Beefcake can't get to the heart of the matter and get these guys to rediscover their friendship, then who the hell can? It seemed as though cooler heads would prevail until that coward Marty Jannetty tried to escape through the barbershop window. By turning away from his former partner, Shawn Michaels himself began to crack away at the glass ceiling he himself was under, and it set the tone for his character for the remainder of his career. It's appropriate that he would soon be known as the Heartbreak Kid because this scene definitely broke some hearts amidst the WWF fanbase. This breakup between the Rockers became a defining template for how tag team splits should be done, at least until it came to
these two guys.
I hate your fucking guts.
It's deliciously ironic that the best friend of one of the most likable guys in wrestling, in Sami Zayn, happens to be one of the most untrustworthy and detestable characters in the last 20 years of wrestling, Kevin Owens. It was at Ring of Honor's final battle in 2009 when Steen violently turned on his partner El Generico after they failed to beat the Young Bucks. This began an on-again, off-again rivalry that has lasted for 16 years up to the time of this video's release. No, I am not keeping up that charade. If what happened at Final Battle was like a dagger to the heart, then what took place 4 years later in different companies under different names, well, that was like giving it a few extra twists. It was at TakeOver R Evolution in December 2014 when Sami Zayn did the improbable and finally beat Adrian Neville for the NXT Championship. The elation was felt in Full Sail from the fans to the wrestlers, especially Sami's good friend Kevin Owens, who had just debuted earlier in the evening. You love to see... Well, you know, time heals all wounds. They would fight, they'd get together, they'd fight, they'd get together. Of course, they even won tag team gold at WrestleMania a few years ago.
Not again! Stop this! Damn it, stop it!
Oh, come on, Sammy, how do you keep trusting this guy? I thought Sting was a sucker for hanging out with Lex Luger as long as he did. As brutal and heart-wrenching as these betrayals have been, they've always led to amazing matches and moments between the two men. Kevin Owens is currently out of action with a neck injury, but something tells me we have not seen the last of Steen Erico. Zoanes? You know what, I give up on that one. Hey, you want to know about another really good Kevin Owens betrayal? For 6 months, starting in 2016, Kevin Owens, then the Universal Champion, and Chris Jericho, in the midst of a career renaissance built on scarves and a clipboard, had formed an unlikely yet powerful and entertaining partnership. From the beginning, it was obvious this would eventually lead to some sort of blow-up and a blow-off. Yet both guys were so treacherous, you never could tell who was going to stab whom in the back. Their time together peaked in the Festival of Friendship on an episode of Raw in Las Vegas. The celebration, organized by Jericho himself, featured an absurd parade of lavish gifts from Y2J to KO, only for Owens to return the favor with a fancy new clipboard and a surprise beatdown. KO lowering the boom on Jericho after the realization set in is one of the biggest gut punches WWE has pulled off in a long time. A ride that had fans feeling a wide range of emotions from beginning to end. You might say it was Jericho getting a taste of his own medicine. Who could forget in 2008 when he threw Shawn Michaels' head through the Geratron 5000? The moment that eerily echoed the barbershop window incident and kicked off one of the best feuds of the entire year. The split between Chris and Kevin was meant to set up a WrestleMania main event between the two for the Universal title until Vince McMahon pulled a tiny betrayal of his own and moved the belt to the suddenly hot Goldberg and Brock program. Now relegated to the second match of the night for an angle he worked hard to get over, this was part of what led Jericho to accept New Japan's offer to face Kenny Omega at the following year's Wrestle Kingdom, a match that got the wheels in the head of a certain billionaire turning. I could go on. There are a million great examples of friends turning on friends, like when Eddie Guerrero turned on Rey Mysterio, or when Chavo Guerrero turned on Rey Mysterio, or when Batista turned on Rey Mysterio, or when Dominic Mysterio... Actually, you know what? I'm getting ahead of myself there. Let's wrap this category up with one final beat.
What? Oh my God! What the?
After he and best bud Johnny Gargano failed on 3 successive attempts to regain the NXT Tag Team titles, Tommaso Ciampa shocked fans everywhere at the very end of TakeOver Chicago back in 2017. Just when we thought the show was going to come to a close, boom, heel turn, bitch. I loved this twist when it happened. It was one of the first times that Triple H had done this sort of fake out with the closing moments of the show. It was so shocking and jarring, you couldn't help but stand and applaud at the audacity of the move. It got the whole wrestling world buzzing about the potential. But as fantastic as that opening salvo was, I hate the fact that everything after that fell well short of expectations through no fault of their own. They couldn't follow up on the moment because Ciampa had injured his leg in that main event match and would be out for months. He came back and even won the NXT Championship with some accidental help from his old buddy Gargano, but things were once again put on hold between them when Tommaso had to get neck surgery. It took 3 years and a friggin' pandemic, but the two finally got their closure in a cinematic match on NXT in April of 2020. It sucks that the story didn't play out like they had all hoped, but the awesome nature of that first assault by Ciampa sort of makes up for it. While we're on the subject, what are some of your favorite turncoat moments in wrestling? Be sure to post them in the comments. Alright, moving on to our next category of families. And this first one is a real Canadian loony. I mean doozy. In the fall of 1993, Bret Hart's big feud with Jerry Lawler was put on hold for, let's just call them legal reasons, and so the WWF had to pivot. Luckily, at Bret's insistence, they were able to keep things in the family. After spending most of his time in the Federation in lower-level tag teams, young Owen Hart got his biggest break yet at the '93 Survivor Series, as part of the Hart family's battle against not Jerry Lawler and his Knights. Tension between him and Bret built from there. Then finally came the big moment at the '94 Royal Rumble. During their tag title match against the Quebecers, Bret sustained a leg injury and was unable to tag in Owen, costing them the match. It would also end up costing him several years of peace between him and his brother after Owen famously, well, you know.
And that's why I kicked your leg out of your leg.
The moment was iconic, and the familial ties made this treachery unlike any other in WWF history. It set off the premier feud of the year and turned Owen into a breakout star. And if Owen hadn't messed up that leg-kicking line, he might have eventually surpassed the mid-card. Now, if there's one person whose work I always appreciate, it's Scott Steiner. I've been watching back a lot of his stuff lately, and I'm always really impressed by it. You know, back as far as 1992, promoters wanted he and his brother Rick to be split up so Scott could be a solo solo wrestler, but Scott had always apparently refused, citing loyalty to his brother. But in 1998, he received an offer he couldn't refuse, a chance to be the 23rd member of the NWO.
To that powerbomb question, yes. Oh, what did I just see?
Truly, it was this turn at Super Brawl 8 that defined the rest of Scott's career for the better. Once he changed his look and started borrowing from superstar Billy Graham, the wrestling world was never the same again. Even though his time with the World Championship felt too little too late, his overall contributions to the sport are numerous, especially after what happened at Super Brawl. Enthusiasts of freaks, peaks, suplexes, and math owe a great debt to Scott Steiner for sitting his brother in the back.
My God, I don't believe this. Somebody tell me this is not true.
One of the biggest double-edged swords in wrestling is the over-involvement of the McMahon family. Just think, if Vince had told his wife and kids to stay off the camera in the 90s, we could have saved ourselves from a whole lot of crappy storylines and matches. That being said, one of the Attitude Era's best moments was a direct result of family getting involved in the business. In early '99, a young Stephanie McMahon was introduced as Vince's meek and demure daughter, ultimately set up as a pawn in her father's grudges. Fast forward to the end of the year. Stephanie is set to be wed to her boyfriend Test, only for that dastardly Triple H to swoop in and marry her in Vegas while she was unconscious. Boy oh boy, the stuff you could get away with back then. At Armageddon that December, Papa Vince fought the game for Stephanie's honor, but in the end, she proved she wasn't the one who needed saving anymore. The twist of Stephanie being behind it all, having orchestrated the plot, was a great way to further the storyline and to cement her and Trips as the most enduring heel characters of the latter half of the Attitude Era. Then they totally overstayed their welcome, but I already talked about that in my video on The Authority. Also, considering how everything's worked out with the McMahon family in 2025, thinking about how Hunter and Stephanie worked together to topple Vince McMahon, they kinda called it.
Getting the trophy back to him. Oh my God! My God!
In that magical time known as the year 2000, one of my favorite acts in wrestling were Edge and Christian. They were hilarious on the mic, they were great in the ring, they were the total package, no pun intended for Lex Luger. But by 2001, the writing was on the wall and it was pretty clear these guys were headed for Splitsville. With big things planned for Edge, like winning the 2001 King of the Ring and the Intercontinental title, it left Christian's character to stew in his own jealousy for months. Finally, after a summer full of will he or won't he, X-Chin finally broke things up in violent fashion. As much as I enjoyed seeing these two dominate the tag scene, they had already accomplished a lot together in a short amount of time, and it was time for the two to spread their wings. ENC's respective singles careers would go in very different directions, but the two have ultimately done well for themselves in the long run, and that initial split was just the shakeup the two needed to truly grow as characters.
2,000 years later.
That is the Judgment Day from their collective side. Oh my God!
There are few success stories in today's WWE like Dominic Mysterio's, debuting in the Thunderdome 5 years ago under immense pressure as the lanky son of Rey Mysterio. Lots of folks wouldn't give him the time of day when he first came on the scene. Now he's one of the company's most popular characters despite playing a baddie as of press time. At the first ever Clash at the Castle in 2022, Dom had enough of hanging around with his deadbeat dad and his Canadian friend, and finally took his frustrations out on them both. My favorite part of this moment isn't the turn itself, which is well done, but it's what comes right after that when it cuts right to the Judgment Day, who have the absolute best reaction. Just brilliant heel whimsy on display. Since then, Dom has been way more than a Nepo baby. His natural talent and charisma have carried him to where he is today, and is on pace to become one of WWE's biggest names of the future. If that clothesline hadn't happened at Clash at the Castle, his story would likely be very different today. Okay, we've seen breakups between friends and family. Now it's time for our third category, which is faction betrayal. Every chain is as strong as its weakest link, and sometimes culling the herd can make for great storytelling.
Wait a minute! I want to... Come on!
The Four Horsemen were known for being ruthless and unforgiving to anyone who dared oppose them. And oftentimes, their greatest rivals were the ones who had the most inside knowledge of the group. The team's lineup changed a lot over time, and while most outgoing members left peacefully, others were not so lucky. Sting was famously kicked out of the group for daring to challenge Ric Flair for the World Championship. OG member Ole Anderson got the boot for having the nerve to attend his son's amateur wrestling meets instead of working towns. Hey, wait a minute, didn't Ric Flair get in trouble for that same thing for shootsies years later? The fans fell in love with Lex Luger once he had enough of being part of the Horsemen, only for his new friend in Barry Windham to take his place in the group by stabbing the total package in the total backage. God, I hate my brain sometimes! And let's circle back to Mr. Nice Guy himself, the Stinger, the victim of one of the Horsemen's best and, frankly, funniest betrayals of all time. Like, come on, Sting, you really should have seen it coming by then.
Oh my God!
When it comes to all-time stables in WWE, it's hard not to put the Shield up near the top. It gave the world 3 legitimate stars with Hall of Fame level accolades. These 3 helped define the scene in WWE for years to come. And much like how Shawn Michaels redefined Betrayal in '92, so too did Seth Rollins in 2014. Oh man, folks, there it is, the debut of one of the biggest stars in WWE, the Shield chair! You have to hand it to them, they've gotten a ton of mileage out of this singular moment. Not only did it set in motion the journeys of 3 very different future world champions, it's still often cited and referenced on programming more than a decade since it happened. Certainly each man has had his share of ups and downs 11 years later, but the story of Roman, Seth, and Dean was a rare instance of the company getting it right from the very start. I know this video's been really heavy on heel turns, but turning your back on a cause you once believed in is not exclusively a heel trait. As a matter of fact, some of my favorite moments in my fandom came from when babyfaces gave their boss the finger, or in more PG terms, a hearty thumbs down. WWE may have dropped the ball with babyface Randy Orton in 2004, but they more than made up for it with Batista in 2005. And this moment on the Raw after No Way Out is what sealed the deal. A perfect callback to the original thumbs down moment when Triple H turned on Orton after SummerSlam. The crowd went nuclear when the Animal finally pulled off what they'd wanted to see him do for months. Now, as someone who was personally victimized by the H-Man's reign of terror, seeing that moment play out in real time was an unbelievable sense of catharsis. The kind of moment that would make you stand up and scream, Here's another great example of a babyface breaking free. Back when the push Daniel Bryan sentiment was at its most rabid yet seemingly most ignored in WWE, the last thing fans wanted to see was Bryan becoming a servant of the Wyatt family. It made Daniel look like a chump and seemed to be done on purpose in order to get the fans to pipe down. But down they did not pipe. It came to a head a couple weeks before the 2014 Royal Rumble when D-Bry had had enough of B-Ray's form of leadership, causing him to take off his coveralls and see the light. That massive unified yes chant from the crowd as Bryan was getting ready to lay into Bray was one of the best moments of hope we had in this miserable authority era. So naturally, it was snuffed out a little longer when Bray beat Bryan clean at the pay-per-view. No way that could have backfired on him. Anyway, do you want to see a babyface betrayal at the Royal Rumble itself? That worked really well. In front of a rabid fan base that had wanted to see the tribal chief get knocked off his throne for well over a year, our old friend Sami Zayn finally got his Batista moment, his time to shine by turning his back on someone he used to respect. For the fans, it was a huge relief, if only for a few seconds, as Sami would then be summarily turned into paste. And though Sami's moment didn't lead to him beating Roman, he did get a moment of glory and a measure of revenge when he and his buddy Kevin Owens beat the Usos for the tag belts in one of WrestleMania 39's 2 main events. Okay, we made it through the first 3 categories. There was friends, families, factions, and now it's time for the special 4th category. Fuck Hulk Hogan. Oh God, now I realize how that sounds coming out of my mouth, and oh, that doesn't look good either. No, I'm not saying that, but nearly everyone who ever tag teamed with him or managed him are the ones who said it. Take a look. Like we saw way back with Bruno, when you're the top guy, everyone wants a piece of you. And when you're the top babyface, that means you're going to be asked to sprinkle some of that magic dust on everyone else. From Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff, to Andre the Giant, to Randy Savage, to Brother Brutai, to Jimmy Hart, to Sting of all people, to Shawn Michaels, to Bully Ray. It's crazy to look back and see just how many people turned on that guy over the course of his career. Of course he's his own category. Truly, it's a testament to just how good of a babyface Hogan was during the height of Hulkamania. Because honestly, a lot of those latter era programs that I just listed off, a lot of the ones we think are all bad, still did great business. Hey, the match with Brutus was hot garbage, but the Starrcade numbers did go up from the year before. Well, with that, folks, I think that about sums up my favorite betrayals and backstabbings throughout the years in wrestling. But what are some of your favorites? Let me know in the comment section below. Like I said, there are lots of examples I did not include here, and I'm sure everyone's lists are going to be a little bit different, because if there's one thing that wrestling fans will betray, it's uniformity. I'm Brian Zane, and I'll see you next time.